Welcome to another video, guys. Today we're going to find out if the BMW 128i is a worthy 2+2 coupe manual naturally aspirated rear-wheel drive alternative to my 2022 Subaru BRZ. Now, I know I said in the previous video that I wouldn't drive the BRZ in another comparison video, but my last track day in the BRZ was back in October, and I haven't had a chance to really push it since then, so cut me some slack here. The road is actually pretty damp. It's been raining here recently, so I'm actually looking forward to seeing how this BRZ performs in the wet. But the goal of this video, again, is to find out if the nearly 15-year-old 128i can be made into a fun canyon/track car. But more on that modified 128i later. Let's first revisit my precious little BRZ. It's got quite a few mods now, but the main ones that are relevant here are the Annex Club Spec Pro coilovers. This is a pre-production kit, 5K front, 6K rear spring rate, and we've got some 17x8-inch NK wheels wrapped in Kumho V730 tires, and my AWE Touring exhaust. Now, as I found out on the way up the hill, these V730 tires are basically useless in the wet. They have very little, at least longitudinal grip. So we're gonna play it a little safe today and leave traction and stability on. Zero traction in first gear, and that's with all the systems on. Wow, this car has no grip out here. I can just feel that rear diff fighting for traction and failing. I haven't driven in the wet in a very long time, so excuse me if I'm driving a little conservatively today. Nevertheless, the BRZ never fails to put a smile on my face. It's just so fun to drive. It's so engaging. It's always up on its tippy toes through the corners. Even in the dry, with the right set of tires and suspension, you can get this car to play around with you. Electric power steering, one of the better ones that I've tried, but still not as brimming full of feedback as a good old-fashioned hydraulic rack. Not the most mechanical transmission in the world, but still definitely adds to the driving pleasure of this car. Of course, we got this 2.4 liter flat 4 engine making over 210 wheel horsepower by most accounts. And with my AWE exhaust, this thing actually sings a bit at the higher RPMs. It revs out to almost 7,500 RPM. Brakes feel good. All I've got are upgraded Raybestos pads and fluid. Again, no traction, but still just such an enjoyable car to drive, whether at 70% or 100%. This car just gives you feedback and it responds to your inputs. It feels refreshingly analog for a brand new car. So nowadays, if you want a car that shares its formula with the BRZ and you want it brand new, you basically don't have many options at all. And in the sub $40,000 price range, this pretty much is your only option. You could go, and I've said this many times before, for an ND2 Miata. It's not a car that I would personally be able to daily drive. But if you go a bit older, say 5, 10, even 15 years, that opens up quite a few options, and that's where the BMW 1 Series comes into play. I've compared my BRZ against various M3s of the E46 and E92 generation, and those cars are brilliant, truly some of the best driving machines ever made. Both of those generation M3s weigh in the 3,400 to 3,700 pound range, and they feel much heavier than the BRZ when attacking a twisty road. And that's where I think the 128i, despite being essentially an entry-level BMW sports coupe, that's where that car can shine, because it weighs right around 3,000 pounds, as you'll see here with the weight reduction that the owner has done. And it's got a naturally aspirated straight six engine that makes comparable power to the BRZ. But is a modified entry-level 1 Series going to be as fun to drive as my BRZ, which is a more dedicated pure sports car? That's what we're going to find out. All right, we are now in the BMW 128i. This is a 2012 M Sport model with just around 43,000 miles, and the owner Litco has modified this thing for track use while still maintaining some level of daily drivability. So I'll put the full list of modifications in the video description, but some of the main items here: TC Kline SA coilovers, BMW 1M/M3 front and rear control arms and trailing arms, 6-piston front brakes from the 135i, 328i rear brake calipers, and DS2500 pads all around. In terms of power, this thing is barely more powerful than stock. It's just got some catless headers and a tune. So this thing should be making around 250 to 260 brake horsepower. It's got the 3-liter naturally aspirated straight six that originally produced, or at least was rated for, 230 brake horsepower. Now, I might have misspoken when I mentioned the car weighed around 3,000 pounds. That's the end goal for this car, according to Litco. Right now, it probably weighs closer to 3,200. Unfortunately, this car still has the stock open differential, but Litco does have plans to put a limited slip in this thing very soon. With that being said, let's see how this 128i drives. Such a nice, pleasant sound. Everything about these older BMWs, it just feels so nice. It's familiar. I used to own an 03 540i. That distinctive BMW interior smell, this somewhat vague and rubbery but very easy to use manual shifter. And I actually quite like this OEM M Sport steering wheel. It's got a nice thick rim, and this perforated leather feels really good to the touch. We're gonna turn traction and DSC fully off. We're on some Falken RT660 tires, so very track-focused tires, similar to my Kumho V730s on the BRZ, but according to Litco, these should be a bit better in the wet. Good old-fashioned hydraulic steering as well, so let's see how this feels. Oh, all right, spins right through first gear. There we go. Wow, this throttle response is gorgeous. It's so linear. Even though it's drive-by-wire, it's so smooth, it's so direct. Better throttle response than my BRZ. Wow, this engine's so smooth. It's got really nice mid-range torque, and it revs out nicely to right around 6,700, 6,800 RPM. Man, this classic BMW straight six feel, it's unmistakable. Listen to that. It's so smooth. It's not a particularly loud or aggressive sounding engine, but it's just buttery, buttery smooth all the way throughout the rev range. I'm not sure how much camber this car is running, but it definitely has a pretty responsive front end. And this hydraulic steering rack is quite good as well. Decent feedback through the wheel, and the weighting is nice. It loads up. Overall, it's just so easy to hop into this car and drive it quickly. Third gear, plenty of torque from 3,500 RPM. Now let's open it up here on the straights and see how the acceleration feels. Not bad, not bad. Similar to my BRZ. I think the power to weight ratio is very, very close actually. About 400 pounds more weight, so not an insignificant difference. But as far as BMWs go, this is definitely one of the lighter models you can buy, from the last 15 years at least. It's so easy to heel toe because of that throttle response. Brakes feel solid. These 6-piston 135i front brakes, no complaints at all. Now the shifter feel again is just classic BMW. It's not the greatest, it's a little bit rubbery, but the engagement is very positive. You always know which gate you're going into. With the BRZ transmission, it has to be said, while not perfect by any means, definitely feels a little bit more mechanical than this one. Also, the center of gravity of this car feels a bit higher, that's for sure. Oh, a little bit of one tire fire there. Yeah, this car could really benefit from a limited slip differential. Right now it's very easy to be aggressive on the throttle coming out of a corner and get the rear end to step out quite a bit, but you can't really hold the slide. It just wants to sort of straighten out because that inside rear tire is just spinning. I think that one change alone would really transform the driving dynamics of this car, because at its core, this BMW 1 Series is a really, really nice car. It's very driver focused. Despite not being a fancy M3, despite not having a super high revving engine, I mean, this engine is shared with the base 328i of the era, the E92 and the E90. But the bones of this car are good. It's got great throttle response. It makes enough power. A lot of those bones, you could argue, have been changed, the suspension, the brakes, but hey, these are easy mods. These are bolt-ons. They're not difficult to do. This TC Kline SA suspension actually feels excellent out here. It's firm, it keeps the car planted, but at the same time it handles bumps very nicely. So it seems to me that the base car is still very capable. It's a good foundation for light mods. Man, this car is really good. It's surprisingly good. You wouldn't think that a little base 128i, not even the turbocharged 135, would be this engaging to drive, but I'm very pleasantly surprised. With just some basic mods, some suspension work, some brakes, catless headers, and a tune, this car really does feel alive. Second gear. Super smooth. This car does not lack power. I'd love to try a 135i now and see just how big of a difference the turbos make. I've driven a BMW 1M and that car is an absolute animal, an absolute riot to drive. This car feels a lot more, I guess you could say, safer to push hard, but now I'm really curious what a lightly modified 135i would feel like. Can it capture 80 to 90% of that 1M's wild character, while still offering some of the laid-back nature when you want it of this 128i. All right, so back to the question of BRZ versus modified 128i. I can definitely say that the BRZ is still a more driver-focused car in the sense that you feel that it's lighter, you feel that it has a lower center of gravity, and as a result, it just feels a bit more tossable, especially with its OEM limited slip differential. Now that being said, the 128i, nowadays you can pick these up for a little over 10 grand, maybe 15 grand for a pretty clean one. Now, let's say you drop 5 grand into mods, and then you have a car that's, I would say, very close to the BRZ in fun factor. German, it has good build quality, fewer squeaks and rattles in the interior, and it's definitely just a more upscale premium product compared to that BRZ. So if you like tinkering, if you like modding, and you want some level of comfort and daily drivability, the 128i is a very good choice indeed. It also has a bigger back seat. Not a big back seat, but certainly bigger than the one in the BRZ. So I've really enjoyed driving it. I hope Litco will just address a couple of the little things in the future to make this car perfect. Maybe a slightly more aggressive exhaust, maybe improving the shift feel if that's possible, and most importantly, adding a limited slip differential. Let me know what you guys think of the 128i as a modding platform or even as a track car. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.